I first saw Avenging Spirit on YouTube, fairly recently too, shoved into someone's top 100 Game Boy games of all time list. And I knew, with only having seen 6 or maybe 7 seconds of gameplay footage, that I needed to play this game. It got by me, somehow, and it shouldn't have. So what did I see in those few seconds that really appealed to me? Well, the characters' sprites were big and well animated, and the aesthetic looked fairly anime-inspired. And if you don't remember, or maybe you're too young to know, there was a time here in the States where publishers would try to hide the fact that things came from Japan. Games would get renamed or cover art would get changed, and almost never for the better. One of the more famous examples of this is the god-awful cover art for Ico on PlayStation 2. Avenging Spirit is a game very much from Japan, and it suffers from both a name change and a cover art change. Now, Avenging Spirit isn't the worst game name I've ever heard, and I'm not sure if it's better or worse than the equally generic Japanese title of Phantasm. But what I am certain of is that the box art got horribly mutilated on its voyage overseas. The North American box art is so uninspired and ultimately boring that I can't believe it sold any copies over here. In fact, it's so different than the original art that I can't even believe that they're the same game. Avenging Spirit has one hook, and it's introduced at the very start of the game. Your character gets killed, his girlfriend gets kidnapped, and now, well, he's a ghost. And he can't even survive in ghost form. He has to inhabit other bodies. And that's the hook. Every enemy you encounter is another optional playable character. Now, this sounds like a gimmick, and in a way it is. But when every level introduces new enemies, each with their own strengths, weaknesses, and powers, it's a gimmick that never really gets old. And more importantly, it gives the game a ton of replayability. If you're anything like me, you like to stick with one character or one weapon when you start a game, to really get to know how to play it. And I tried that with my first playthrough of Avenging Spirit. To my detriment, that is. To be any good here, you need to try out every character available, because certain ones are definitely better at maneuvering through levels, while others are almost designed perfectly to fight each boss. And the bosses aren't easy, but I found the real challenge to be the levels themselves. They're really well made and vary in terms of complexity. Finding and memorizing locations of life and energy power-ups is essential, so do yourself a favor and explore every level a bit. If you know where to look, you'll find what you need. Unfortunately, there is a challenge here that feels pretty unfair, and I think it has more to do with the Game Boy's limitations than anything else. But I could be wrong. See, enemies respawn almost immediately when the screen scrolls, so if you backtrack even an inch, you can expect to see that once defeated enemy alive and well, and sometimes shooting you from off-screen. Amazingly though, that's my only real complaint about Avenging Spirit. Sure, it's not the longest game in the world, but it will take you a few hours to beat on your first playthrough. The developers were generous enough to give us unlimited continues, which I probably used 100 of. And even better, after continuing, you start each level as the character you died as, with any of the keys you found in that level. Pretty helpful. Graphically, and I don't think I'm overstating this, this is one of the best looking Game Boy games out there. There's almost no flicker or slowdown, and the sprites are big and diverse. But the real appeal here are the cutscenes. The story's not great, but it's functional and it's told really well through the cutscenes. They could have just used static images, but instead they're beautifully animated. Honestly, this game is a technical marvel on Nintendo's Game Boy. Not only does it look great and play great, it introduces a gameplay mechanic that never gets stale, and until today, it's a concept that I thought would be impossible on the limited processing power of the original Game Boy hardware. It's a true hidden gem that puts a unique spin on platformers, and shouldn't be missed.